My name is Rosalyn, and I am 28 years old and a nursing student just 3 months from graduation. I drove 6 hours home for Christmas with my car packed full of carefully wrapped gifts. The house was eerily quiet when I arrived. No decorations, no familiar chaos, just Grandma Eleanor in the kitchen eating microwave turkey. On the refrigerator was a hastily scribbled note: Spent your $10,000 loan on a family Caribbean cruise. Take care of Grandma. Back in 4 days. Love you. Grandma looked at me and said calmly, "We will fix this." I just nodded. 4 days later, they were begging. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear how my family learned their lesson about taking advantage of the wrong person. Trust me, what happens next changed everything. I grew up in Springfield, Missouri, and what I would call a middle-class family. My dad, Harold, worked in sales, the kind with unpredictable commissions that meant some months we lived comfortably and others we barely scraped by. Mom, Diane, was a part-time receptionist at a dental office who spent more than she earned. My brother, Jacob, 2 years older, and my sister, Olivia, 3 years younger, completed our family. Well, them and Grandma Eleanor, who moved in after Grandpa died when I was 10. Grandma was the steady, reliable presence in our financially chaotic home. While my parents rode emotional and financial roller coasters, Eleanor maintained a calm, practical approach to life. She taught me to budget, save, and plan for rainy days, lessons my parents never seemed to absorb, despite her attempts to guide them. Our relationship was special. On nights when Mom and Dad argued about money, I would slip into her converted den bedroom, and she would tell me stories about her youth or help me with homework. "You have a good head on your shoulders, Rosie," she would say. "You are going to break this cycle." And I tried. After high school, I was accepted into nursing school in Chicago. I worked multiple jobs to support myself, waiting tables in the mornings, working at the campus library in the afternoons, and taking weekend shifts at a retirement home. Every penny counted as I balanced tuition, rent for a tiny studio apartment, textbooks, and basic necessities. The $10,000 student loan was for my final semester, covering clinical rotations and certification exams. I had avoided debt for nearly 4 years, but these final requirements were impossible to fund from my jobs alone. The loan represented my finish line, the last financial hurdle before becoming a registered nurse with a stable income. My family had a history of financial irresponsibility that occasionally spilled over into my carefully managed life. Dad once borrowed my first car, a used Honda I had saved for over 2 years, and returned it with a damaged transmission he could not afford to fix. Mom had emergencies that required loans she rarely repaid. Jacob borrowed textbook money one semester and paid it back 3 months late after I had to use credit cards for my own books. Olivia once borrowed my credit card for what she claimed was a school supply emergency, but turned out to be concert tickets. Each time, I forgave them. They were family, and despite their flaws, I loved them. Grandma Eleanor would shake her head and remind me, "Love does not mean being a doormat, Rosie." But I always made excuses for them. Christmas was special to me. Growing up, even in the leanest years, my parents made an effort to create magical holiday memories. The house would transform with lights and decorations. The scent of Mom's sugar cookies would fill the air, and for a few days, financial stresses seemed distant. As an adult, I maintained my love for the holiday, carefully saving throughout the year to buy thoughtful gifts for everyone. This particular Christmas, I had budgeted even more carefully. For Mom, I found an antique brooch resembling one her grandmother had owned. For Dad, a rare first edition of his favorite Western novel. Jacob would receive high-end headphones for his aspiring music production career, and Olivia a leather portfolio for her art school projects. For Grandma Eleanor, I had splurged on a cashmere sweater and digitized all our family photos onto a digital frame. In the weeks leading up to the holiday, I had several conversations with my family. No one mentioned vacation plans. Mom talked about her church group's cookie exchange. Dad complained about year-end sales quotas, and we discussed who would pick up Aunt Martha from the train station on Christmas Eve. Our tradition seemed securely in place. The drive from Chicago to Springfield normally took about 6 hours, longer in holiday traffic. I left at 5 in the morning, thermos of coffee beside me, Christmas playlist ready. Despite my exhaustion from final exams and clinical rotations, excitement kept me alert. It had been nearly 6 months since I had seen everyone together, and I was eager for the comfort of home, however imperfect my family might be. As I drove south on I-55, watching the urban landscape of Chicago transform into the rural fields of Illinois and eventually Missouri, I imagined the scene that would greet me. Mom would be in the kitchen, Dad watching football, siblings arguing over the television remote, and Grandma in her recliner with her knitting. The Christmas tree would be twinkling, and the house would smell like pine and cinnamon. These thoughts carried me through traffic jams, bathroom breaks at gas stations, and a quick lunch from a drive-thru. By the time I reached the familiar streets of my hometown, the winter sun was already beginning to set, casting long shadows across the snow-dusted yards of my childhood neighborhood. I was coming home. I had no idea that the home I remembered would not be there when I arrived. As I turned onto Maple Street, I immediately noticed something was off. The Hendersons across from us had their usual over-the-top light display, and the Patels next door had outlined their porch with twinkling icicle lights. But our house stood dark. No illuminated reindeer on the lawn, no wreath on the door, no colorful lights framing the windows. I checked the date on my phone, confirming it was indeed December 23rd, when our decorations should have been up for weeks. There were fewer cars than expected, too. Just Dad's old Buick in the driveway, when I expected to see Mom's SUV, Jacob's beaten-up Corolla, and possibly Olivia's boyfriend's truck. A knot formed in my stomach as I pulled in behind the Buick. With my arms full of gift bags and suitcases, I made my way up the front walk, noticing the uncleared light dusting of snow, unusual since Dad was meticulous about shoveling. I balanced packages precariously as I opened the front door. "Hello, I'm home," I called out, stepping into an undecorated living room. No tree in the corner, no garland on the staircase, no nativity scene on the mantel. The house carried the slightly stale smell of being closed up, with a faint undercurrent of microwaved food. "In the kitchen, dear," came Grandma Eleanor's voice, the only familiar element in this unexpectedly alien homecoming. I dropped my bags in the hallway and followed her voice, finding her at the kitchen table with a plate of microwaved turkey and stuffing. She wore her everyday house dress rather than one of her special holiday outfits. "Grandma, where is everyone? What happened to the decorations?" I asked, the knot in my stomach tightening. Her face, lined with 82 years of life experience, held an expression I could not quite read, somewhere between embarrassment and anger. "Oh, Rosie, I'm so sorry you came home to this. They left yesterday." "Left? What do you mean, left? Where did they go?" She gestured with her fork toward the refrigerator. "See for yourself." There, stuck under a souvenir magnet from Branson, was a note in my mother's distinctive handwriting, complete with her signature flower doodles in the margin. I pulled it off and read, "Rosie, sweetie, last-minute amazing deal on a cruise. Couldn't pass it up. Used your loan money. Hope you don't mind. Consider it our family Christmas gift. Taking care of Dills when we return. Grandma couldn't manage the trip with her mobility issues, so please take care of her. Back in 4 days. Love you bunches. Mom, Dad, Jake, and Liv. XOXO." I read it twice, certain I had misunderstood. The casual tone, the hearts dotting the I's, as if borrowing $10,000 without permission was equivalent to borrowing a sweater. I couldn't even finish the sentence. "Left yesterday afternoon," Grandma supplied, her voice tight, "right after they booked the last-minute cruise. Said they got an email about a cancellation deal, paid for it, packed, and were gone within 3 hours. They didn't even take down the Christmas decorations, just never put them up in the first place. I slumped against the refrigerator, the note crumpling in my hand. But my loan money, that was for my final semester, for my clinicals and certification. How could they just take it? You mentioned the money was coming through last week when you called. Diane asked if you were still using the joint account your parents set up when you first went to college. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The account had been opened when I was 18, with my parents as co-signatories for emergencies. I had never gotten around to removing them, using the account mainly for student loans and larger expenses, while my daily spending came from a separate personal account. They can't just take it. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew they could, and they had. My phone buzzed with a notification. With numbed fingers, I opened it to find I had been tagged in a family photo on social media. There they were, all four of them, standing on a cruise ship deck, wearing leis and holding tropical drinks. Surprise Christmas vacation. So blessed, read my mother's caption, posted just 30 minutes earlier. They didn't even take you, I said to Grandma, the betrayal deepening as I looked at her frail form at the kitchen table. Doctors said my hip wouldn't handle the ship, and they didn't want to cancel their fun, she replied, with a bitter smile that held no humor. Your father said they'd bring me a souvenir. I felt physically ill, a wave of nausea washing over me as the implications fully registered. My legs felt weak, and I grabbed the counter to steady myself. Rosie, sit down before you fall down, Grandma ordered, suddenly all business. I obeyed it automatically, dropping into a kitchen chair. They stole from me, I whispered, still unable to fully process it. My own family stole from me. Yes, they did, Grandma agreed, no sugarcoating in her tone. To my surprise, she looked angry rather than defensive of her son and his family. And we're going to deal with it. I barely heard her. My mind was racing through consequences. Without that money, I couldn't register for my final clinical rotations. Without clinicals, I couldn't graduate. Without graduation, no nursing license. 4 years of brutally hard work and sacrifice, derailed by my family's impulsive vacation. I need to see if they really took it all, I said, pulling out my phone with shaking hands. A few taps confirmed my worst fears. The account had been drained 3 days ago with a transfer of $9,876 to a travel agency. They had literally taken every penny, down to the last dollar. I tried calling each family member to only have every call go straight to voicemail. Text messages showed as delivered but unread. Meanwhile, more vacation photos appeared online, each one a fresh stab of betrayal. Let's look around, Grandma suggested, see what else we can find out. In the home office, we discovered printed cruise brochures, Caribbean travel guides, and discarded luggage tags. In my parents' closet, empty hangers where their summer clothes would normally be stored for winter. In the trash, used boarding passes from the flight to Miami. Each discovery was another confirmation that this was no misunderstanding, no emergency, but a calculated decision. They planned this, I said, sinking onto my parents' bed. Maybe not long-term, but once they saw the cruise deal, they deliberately used my money. Grandma sat beside me, her small hand covering mine. Your father has always wanted what he wants when he wants it, she said softly. I failed him as a mother in that way. I should have taught him better. I shook my head, too numb to even cry yet. This is not your fault, Grandma. Perhaps not entirely, but what matters now is what we do next. What we did next was call the financial aid office at my nursing school, only to get a cheerful holiday voicemail stating they would return on January 3rd. I called my academic advisor with the same result. By then, reality had fully sunk in, and so had the first wave of desperate panic. I can't afford another loan, I said, pacing the kitchen while Grandma watched with concern. I maxed out my eligibility with this loan. Without this money, I can't finish school." "You will finish," Grandma said firmly. "We will figure this out." But in that moment, with evidence of my family's betrayal surrounding me and my carefully constructed future suddenly in jeopardy, I couldn't see how. I carried my suitcases and the bags of now meaningless gifts to my childhood bedroom, which remained exactly as I had left it when I moved to Chicago 4 years ago. Posters of nursing pioneers on the walls, bookshelves lined with science textbooks and medical journals, and the corkboard still pinned with acceptance letters and scholarship offers from my senior year of high school. Sitting on the edge of my twin bed, surrounded by the relics of a younger, more trusting version of myself, I finally broke down. The tears came in great heaving sobs that seemed to rise from the very center of my being. I cried for the betrayal, for the careless way my family had jeopardized my future, for the years of hard work now at risk, and for the devastating realization that the people who should protect me the most had instead chosen to harm me for their temporary pleasure. A soft knock came at the door, and Grandma Eleanor entered, carrying a steaming mug of chamomile tea, her own remedy for all of life's troubles. Without a word, she set it on the nightstand and sat beside me, her small body creating barely a dip in the mattress. She placed one gnarled hand on my back, moving it in slow circles as she had done when I was a child with nightmares or fevers. "Let it out, Rosie," she murmured. "You have earned these tears." When the worst of the storm had passed, leaving me hiccuping and red-eyed, she handed me the tea and a box of tissues. "Now we talk," she said firmly. For the next 2 hours we did, not just about the current situation, but about the pattern it represented. "This is not the first time, is it?" Grandma asked, though it was not really a question. "No," I admitted, recalling incidents throughout my life. When I was 16, I saved up $800 from my library page job to buy a laptop for school. Dad borrowed it for an investment opportunity. Never saw that money again. "And your college fund?" Grandma prompted. I grimaced at the memory. Mom and Dad started a college fund when I was born. By the time I was ready for college, there was less than $3,000 in it. They had withdrawn the rest for vacations, a kitchen remodel, and Jacob's car. "Which is why you have worked so hard and taken on so many jobs," Grandma nodded. "And then there was my first car," I continued, the memories flooding back now. "I bought it myself, but Dad used it whenever he wanted. One time he returned it with transmission problems that cost $2,000 to fix, more than I paid for the car. He promised to help with repairs, but never did." "And your brother?" I sighed. "Jacob borrowed $500 for textbooks his sophomore year, promised to pay it back in 2 weeks when his financial aid came through. 3 months and dozens of reminders later, he finally paid me. But by then, I had put my own textbooks on a credit card and was paying interest. And Olivia used my credit card for concert tickets and lied about it. The wound was smaller but no less telling. Said it was for art supplies she needed for a project." Grandma nodded thoughtfully. "Do you see the pattern, Rosie?" I did, with crystal clarity that perhaps had always been there, but that I had refused to acknowledge. "They take advantage of me. They always have." "And do you know something else?" Grandma asked, rising with some difficulty to cross to my bookshelf. She returned with a photo album I had made in high school. "They do it to me, too." As we flipped through old family photos, Grandma revealed her own stories, how my father had convinced her to sell her house and move in with them, promising a renovated den as her private space, only to use most of the proceeds from her home sale to pay off their credit card debt. How her Social Security checks sometimes mysteriously disappeared from her purse before she could deposit them. How her jewelry had gradually gone missing over the years, including her wedding ring during a particularly tight financial month. "Why did you never say anything?" I asked, shocked at these revelations. "Same reason as you, I expect," she said with a sad smile. "Love, shame, hope that next time would be different." My phone buzzed again. More social media notifications. I opened them to find photos of my family ziplining through a tropical forest, swimming with dolphins, enjoying a formal dinner at the captain's table. In each image, they beamed with carefree joy, seemingly without a thought for what they had done or how it would affect me. My messages to them remained unread. "I cannot believe they are just ignoring me," I said, tossing the phone aside in disgust. "They know what they did was wrong," Grandma said firmly. "Easier to pretend everything is fine than face the consequences." I spent the rest of the evening in a daze, making calls that went to voicemail, sending emails that received auto-replies about holiday closures, and calculating and recalculating my finances to find a solution that did not exist. Without that loan money, I was nearly $5,000 short of what I needed for my final semester, even after emptying my meager savings account. Sleep was impossible. I lay awake in my childhood bed, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars I had arranged in accurate constellations on my ceiling at age 12. My mind raced with fearful thoughts. Would I have to drop out so close to graduation? Take a semester off to save money, losing my position in the competitive clinical rotations? Beg the school for emergency assistance? Every option seemed impossible or humiliating. Sometime after midnight, I heard Grandma on the phone in the hallway, her voice uncharacteristically sharp. "Harold James Wilson, you answer this phone right now. I know the ship has service." A pause. "No, I will not call back tomorrow. You put Diane on too. I want you both to hear this." Another pause. "What you have done to Rosalyn is despicable, and there will be consequences when you return." Her voice dropped too low for me to hear the rest. Eventually, exhaustion claimed me, and I fell into troubled dreams where I was drowning in an ocean of student loan paperwork while my family sailed by on a luxury cruise ship, waving and laughing as I called for help. Morning brought no relief. I woke to the stark realization that I had precisely 15 days to somehow come up with nearly $10,000, or my nursing degree and the stable future it promised would be delayed at best, lost at worst. With robotic movements, I showered and dressed, then made my way downstairs, where the sound of activity in the kitchen indicated Grandma was already up. "You look like you have been hit by a truck," she observed bluntly as I entered. "Feel like it too," I mumbled, reaching for the coffee pot. "Sit," she commanded. "I have been thinking." I obeyed, too emotionally drained to do otherwise. The emotional numbness of shock had settled over me, a strange calm after the storm of yesterday's tears. I felt hollow, scraped out, disconnected from the bright, ambitious nursing student who had driven home just 24 hours earlier. Grandma placed a plate of scrambled eggs and toast before me. "Eat while I talk. You will need your strength." I woke the next morning to the aroma of coffee and something sweet baking. For a blissful moment, I forgot everything, thinking perhaps it had all been a bad dream. Then reality crashed back and the hollow feeling returned to my stomach. Dragging myself out of bed, I found Grandma Eleanor already dressed in one of her nice pantsuits, her white hair neatly styled, makeup applied. She sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by notebooks with my laptop open in front of her. A plate of fresh cinnamon rolls sat cooling on the counter. "You're up," she noted without looking away from the screen. "Coffee is fresh. Grab some and join me." I poured a mug of coffee and took a cinnamon roll, though I had little appetite. "You seem energized," I confirmed, taking in her unusual morning efficiency. "I am," she confirmed, finally looking up. Her eyes behind her reading glasses were clear and determined. "I was up at 5, planning." "Planning what?" "Operation Consequence," she replied with grim satisfaction, turning the laptop toward me. To my surprise, she had created a detailed spreadsheet with multiple tabs. "I know this comes as a shock, but your grandmother is not entirely technologically inept. I have been taking classes at the community center for years." "I can see that," I said, impressed despite my emotional exhaustion. "What is all this?" This, my dear, is how we are going to fix the mess your family created. She pointed to the screen. First tab is financial options. Second is legal considerations. Third is a timeline of action items. Fourth is a list of resources and contacts. I blanked at her efficiency. Grandma, I appreciate this, but I'm not sure there is a solution. I have called everyone I can think of, and with the holidays, there is always a solution, she interrupted firmly. It may not be easy or comfortable, but there is always a way forward. She proceeded to outline her strategy. First, she revealed that she had a modest savings account she had kept secret from my parents. Not a fortune, mind you, but enough to temporarily cover your tuition needs if we cannot recover the money in time. Grandma, no, I protested immediately. That is your retirement money. I cannot take that. You are not taking it. I am lending it to you with proper documentation, and your family will be repaying me every penny with interest. The steel in her voice made it clear this was non-negotiable. Besides, she continued more gently, what good is saving for my future if I cannot help secure yours? You are the only one in this family who has shown real responsibility and ambition. My investment in you is the safest one I could make. Tears threatened again, but of a different kind. I don't know what to say. Say you will stop being a doormat, she replied bluntly. Love without limits creates monsters, Rosie. I learned that too late with your father. You have a chance to learn it now. Over the next hour, she shared her own story in more detail than I had ever heard before. How she had enabled my father's poor financial habits from childhood, giving in to his demands and tantrums, making excuses for his irresponsibility, cleaning up his messes. How my grandfather had warned her they were creating an entitled adult, but she had not listened. How she had watched the pattern repeat with my siblings. Your mother is no better, she added. Diane has champagne tastes on a beer budget. Always has. They enable each other's worst tendencies. But what can we do now? I asked. Even if we secure my tuition, they still took my money. That brings us to phase 2, Grandma said, flipping to another spreadsheet tab. Practical consequences. Her plan was comprehensive. We discovered that in their hasty departure, my family had left numerous loose ends. They had taken all house keys, but not changed the security code. They had left the refrigerator nearly empty, several bills unpaid on the counter, and no arrangements for mail collection or other household matters. They assumed you would handle everything, Grandma observed, as you always have. Her Operation Consequence plan addressed all of this and more. She had researched the legal implications of unauthorized use of student loan money. She had called the cruise line customer service that morning, pretending to be my mother, and confirmed the return arrangements. She had contacted her friend Terry, a retired attorney, for advice on drafting a repayment agreement. We need to be ready when they return, Grandma explained. No emotional scenes, no accusations they can dismiss. Just calm, firm consequences with no wiggle room. The plan unfolded with military precision. First, a call to a locksmith to change all exterior locks on the house. They took the keys but left us behind, Grandma reasoned. Clearly, they forfeit entry privileges without our approval. Next, a careful inventory of valuable items in the house to secure. Not that I think they would sell family heirlooms, but better safe than sorry given their current behavior. She had already begun documenting everything with photographs, including the empty student loan account, the crew's social media posts, and the note they had left. Rosie, she said seriously, as we reviewed her plans, the most important thing is that you are prepared to hold firm. They will cry, they will yell, they will try to make you feel guilty. They will say you are overreacting or that it was just a misunderstanding. They will promise to pay you back someday when it's convenient for them. I nodded, knowing she was right. And you need to be ready to say no. to say that their behavior has consequences, and those consequences are immediate and non-negotiable. "What if I cannot?" I whispered, voicing my deepest fear. "What if I give in like I always do?" Grandma took my hands in hers, her paper-thin skin covering surprisingly strong fingers. "You can and you will, because this time you are not alone. I will be right beside you, and I have 82 years of practice at being stubborn." That made me smile, if only faintly. "Besides," she added with a twinkle in her eye, "I have backup." That backup, it turned out, was an impressive network of Eleanor's friends. Terry, the retired attorney, was helping draft a legal binding repayment agreement. Martin, a retired locksmith, offered discounted services to change the locks. Her bridge club friends volunteered to be present during the confrontation as witnesses and moral support. "Elderly does not mean powerless," she informed me with dignity. With renewed purpose, I joined her in implementing the plan. I called my school's financial aid emergency line, and though they could not process anything until after the holiday, they documented the situation for when offices reopened. I secured our important documents in a safe deposit box at Grandma's bank. I helped move particularly valuable or sentimental items to Eleanor's sister's house nearby. By evening, we had changed the locks, secured the valuables, documented the financial theft with bank statements and screenshots, and begun drafting the repayment agreement with Terry's guidance. "Now for the most difficult part," Grandma said as we sat down to a simple dinner: emotional preparation. She was right. The practical tasks had been straightforward, but the thought of confronting my family, of standing firm against their manipulations and guilt trips, filled me with anxiety. "They will say I am being selfish," I said, pushing food around my plate. "That they deserve a vacation after working so hard, that I am making a big deal out of nothing." "And what will you say?" Grandma prompted. I took a deep breath. That taking my money without permission was wrong, that actions have consequences, that I need the money back immediately, or a signed agreement for repayment. "And if they refuse?" The question hung in the air. What would I do if they refused? The answer came more easily than I expected. "Then I will file a police report for theft and contact the school to report fraudulent use of student loan funds." Grandma nodded approvingly. "It will not come to that. They are irresponsible, not stupid, but they need to know you are serious." "I am serious," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. "This is my future. This is my life. I have worked too hard to let them take it away for a vacation." "That's my girl," Grandma said with a proud smile. "Now, let us practice what you will say when they try to make you feel guilty." We spent the evening role-playing different scenarios. Grandma, displaying unexpected acting talent, took turns playing my father's blustering authority, my mother's tearful manipulations, and my siblings' varied approaches to deflecting responsibility. With each practice round, my responses grew more confident, my resolve stronger. By the time we went to bed that night, I felt prepared in a way I never had before for a confrontation with my family. "Remember," Grandma said as we parted for the night, "you are not just doing this for yourself, you are doing it for them too. Real love means setting boundaries. Without consequences, they will never change." As I lay in bed that night, I reflected on how much had changed in just 2 days. I had arrived home excited for a family Christmas and discovered betrayal instead. Terry arrived next, a distinguished woman in her 60s, with silver hair cut in a sharp bob and reading glasses perched on her nose. She carried a leather portfolio and a nonsense attitude. "Eleanor explained the situation," she said, declining offers of coffee or tea. "Let us get straight to business." The repayment agreement she drafted was comprehensive. It outlined the unauthorized withdrawal of $9,876 from my account, set a repayment schedule with modest interest, and included consequences for missed payments, including possible legal action. This is just a starting point for negotiation, Terry explained, but begin from a position of strength. They took advantage of you, not the other way around. After Terry left, we focused on practical preparations. We went grocery shopping, stocking the refrigerator with basics. We collected mail that had accumulated and paid the urgent bills, keeping careful records of these expenses to add to the repayment total. Added to their tab, Grandma said grimly as we wrote a check for the overdue electric bill. By evening, we had secured the house, documented everything, and prepared the formal paperwork. I felt a growing confidence, like putting on armor piece by piece. Good work today, Grandma said as we ate a simple dinner. Tomorrow, we focus on contingency planning. Day 2 brought new challenges. My mother posted more cruise photos, including one captioned, "Best family vacation ever. So grateful for this time together." The casual cruelty of excluding Grandma and me from family while using my money stung afresh. More worryingly, my bank notified me of attempted credit card charges from the cruise ship gift shop. They had been declined due to insufficient available credit, but the attempt indicated my family was now trying to use my credit card as well. Unbelievable, I said, showing Grandmother notification. They steal $10,000 and then try to charge more. Entitlement breeds entitlement, she replied, unsurprised. Call the card company and report potential fraud. I did, explaining the situation to a sympathetic customer service representative who placed a temporary freeze on the card and noted the account for monitoring. The rest of the day was devoted to organizing our documentation into clearly labeled folders and preparing for potential outcomes. Grandma's friend Beth, a retired social worker, came over to help us practice handling emotional confrontations. They will try to push your buttons, she warned. They know exactly which ones work because they installed them. We role-played more scenarios, with Beth taking on my mother's role with frightening accuracy, all tearful accusations and guilt-tripping. "After all we have sacrificed for you, this is how you repay us? By changing the locks on our own home?" Each time I practiced responding calmly but firmly. This is not about past sacrifices. This is about the $10,000 taken from my account without permission. We can discuss access to the house after we resolve the financial issue. By evening, I felt emotionally stronger, though anxiety still churned beneath the surface. Checking the cruise tracking website, we confirmed the ship was on schedule to return to Miami the day after tomorrow. "Almost time," Grandma said, squeezing my hand. Day 3 focused on final preparations and contingency planning. What if they refused to sign the agreement? What if they made a scene that involved neighbors or even the police? What if they simply walked away? For each scenario, we developed a response. Legal options were documented. A rental car was reserved in case we needed to leave quickly. Support people were confirmed for the confrontation. "Remember," Grandma said, as we reviewed everything one last time, "we are not doing this to punish them. We are doing this to establish boundaries and consequences." I nodded, though part of me did want to punish them for their casual betrayal, for the thoughtless way they had risked my future for their pleasure, for leaving Grandma behind without proper care. That evening, a text finally arrived from my mother. "Having the most amazing time. Flying home tomorrow. Slight emergency with your father's work. See you around dinner time. Cannot wait to tell you all about it. Love you." No mention of my money, no acknowledgement of what they had done, no apology. "And so it begins," Grandma said when I showed her the text, the pretense that everything is normal. I did not reply to the message. Day 4 dawned with a light snow falling, adding to the surreal quality of the situation. This should have been Christmas morning with family gathered around a tree opening gifts. Instead, Grandma and I sat at the kitchen table, drinking coffee and watching the clock. Tracking information showed their flight had landed. A subsequent text from my sister confirmed they had collected their luggage and were in a rideshare heading home. Grandma's friends began arriving. Terry with her legal paperwork, Beth with her social work experience, Martin, just in case there were issues with the locks, and 3 members of the Bridge Club as additional witnesses. They gathered in the living room, a gray-haired army of support. "Thank you all for coming," I said, touched by their presence. "We take care of our own," Terry replied simply. "Eleanor has been there for each of us." At some point, a notification from the home security system showed a car pulling into the driveway. Through the front window, I watched my family emerge, sunburned and laden with souvenirs, laughing as they gathered their luggage. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. Grandma came to stand beside me, her small hand finding mine. "Remember who you are," she said quietly. "Remember what you deserve." I nodded, squeezing her hand as the doorbell rang. It was time. The doorbell rang again, more insistently. I took a deep breath, exchanged a final glance with Grandma, and moved to the front window rather than the door. Pulling back the curtains slightly, I could see my family on the porch, my father already reaching for his keys. "Rosie," my mother called, spotting me through the window. "We are home. Open up. It is freezing out here." I pressed the intercom button on the new security system. "I can see that," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. "Why are your keys not working?" My father's face appeared at the window, his expression confused, then angry. "What the hell? Did you change the locks?" "Yes," I confirmed simply. "We need to talk before you come in." "This is ridiculous," he sputtered, his face reddening beneath his fresh tan. "It is 20 degrees out here, and we have been traveling all day. Let us in, right now." "We can talk through the doorbell camera, or you can agree to a calm conversation about what happened with my student loan money." Their faces on the small screen showed a range of emotions. My father looked outraged, my mother confused, Jacob embarrassed, and Olivia increasingly concerned. "What are you talking about?" my mother asked, though her eyes darted away from the camera. "We just need to get inside. We can discuss whatever is bothering you then." "I'm talking about the $10,000 you took from my account without permission, the money that was for my final semester of nursing school, the money you spent on a cruise without even asking me." A moment of silence followed. My father recovered first. "Now listen here," he began, his sales pitch voice activated. "That was a family account, and it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a last-minute cancellation. We deserved a vacation after everything we have been through this year. That does not explain why you didn't ask me first, or why you left Grandma alone without proper care." "Mom was fine," my mother interjected quickly. "And we were going to pay you back, of course. We just needed to enjoy the holidays first. With my money," I added. "Money I needed for school." My mother's expression turned, pleading. "Sweetie, you are making this into something it is not. We are family. We share things. Now please, let us in before we freeze." Grandma stepped up beside me. "There will be conditions for entry," she announced firmly. My father's face darkened further. "Mom, you are behind this. This is between us and Rosalyn." "You left me here too, Harold," Grandma reminded him. "With no discussion, no proper arrangements, just a note telling Rosalyn to take care of me as if I am a houseplant." "We knew Rosie would be here," my mother said defensively, "and the ship was not accessible for someone with your mobility issues." "Convenient," Grandma replied dryly. My siblings had remained largely silent during this exchange, but now Jacob stepped forward. "This is stupid. It is our house too. You cannot keep us out." "Actually, we can," I replied, "and we will until we have discussed the repayment of my money." "Repayment?" my mother echoed, as if the concept was entirely new. "Honey, of course we will pay you back, eventually when things settle down." "When?" I pressed. "With what money?" The uncomfortable shifting and avoided gazes told me everything. There was no plan. There never had been. "Here is what is going to happen," I said. channeling Grandma's calm authority. "We have prepared a repayment agreement. You will review and sign it, then we can discuss entry to the house." "This is insane," my father exploded. "You cannot treat your family like this. After everything we have done for you?" Something inside me hardened at his words. "What exactly have you done for me, Dad? Taken my college fund? Borrowed my car and returned it broken? Used my student loan for a vacation while I worked 3 jobs to put myself through school?" His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. By now, a few neighbors had noticed the commotion. The Patels next door were openly watching from their driveway, and the Henderson children had pressed their faces to their living room window. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation more privately," my mother suggested, her social embarrassment overriding everything else. "I agree," I said. "There's a coffee shop 3 blocks away. We can meet there in 15 minutes to discuss the agreement." "In this weather, with all our luggage?" my father protested. "Your choice," I replied with a shrug. "Public discussion on the porch with the neighbors watching, or private discussion at the coffee shop." They huddled together, whispering urgently. Finally, my mother turned back to the camera. "Fine, the coffee shop. But only you, Rosalyn, not your grandmother's friends." She had spotted Terry through the window, recognizing her as a local attorney. "Non-negotiable," I replied. "Terry comes with me, as does Grandma. The others will wait here." More whispers, then reluctant agreement. They trudged back to their rideshare, which thankfully had waited. 15 minutes later, we sat in the back corner of Magnolia Coffee, a small local shop decorated for Christmas with twinkling lights and pine garlands. The contrast between the festive atmosphere and our tense faces could not be starker. Terry placed a folder on the table between us. "This is a legally binding repayment agreement," she explained in her crisp, professional voice. "It outlines the unauthorized withdrawal of $9,876 from Rosalyn's account and establishes a schedule for repayment." My father did not even reach for it. "This is ridiculous. We do not need lawyers and contracts. We are family." "Family does not steal from family," Grandma replied simply. "We did not steal," my mother insisted, her voice rising enough that a barista glanced our way. She lowered it quickly. "It was a misunderstanding." "What part was misunderstood? The part where you knew it was my student loan money? The part where you didn't ask permission? The part where you knew I needed it for school?" No one answered directly. "Look," Jacob finally said, "what is done is done. The money is spent. We cannot magically give it back right now." "Which is why there is a repayment plan," Terry interjected, tapping the folder, "starting with an immediate payment of $1,000 from your return flight refunds." My head snapped up. What return flight refunds? A guilty look passed between my parents. "We had to change our return flights," my mother admitted. "The original ones were for December 27th, but my father had a work emergency. So you have refunds coming," Grandma concluded, "which will go directly to Rosalyn." More uncomfortable shifting. My father finally picked up the agreement and flipped through it, his frown deepening. "These terms are ridiculous. There is no way we can pay back this much this quickly."
"Then Rosalyn will have no choice but to pursue other options," Terry said calmly, "including reporting the unauthorized use of student loan funds, which I understand can trigger investigations by both the school and the lending institution." My mother paled. "You would not do that to your own family." "I do not want to," I said honestly. "I wanted to come home for Christmas, spend time with my family, and go back to school to finish my degree. You were the ones who changed the plan, not me." For the first time, Olivia spoke up. "Mom, Dad, she is right. We took her money without asking. That was wrong." My sister's unexpected support created a shift in the atmosphere. My mother's defiance crumbled slightly. My father looked less certain. At minimum, the credit card charges attempted from the cruise ship's gift shop need to be addressed. What credit card charges? My father asked sharply, looking at my mother. She had the grace to look embarrassed. I may have tried to use Rose's card for a few souvenirs. I thought it would be fine. After taking $10,000, you tried to charge more? Grandma asked incredulously. The conversation continued in this vein for nearly an hour. My parents cycled through denial, anger, minimizing, and blame shifting. Jacob largely supported them, while Olivia became increasingly uncomfortable, occasionally offering quiet support for my position. Outside, the light snow continued to fall, accumulating on sidewalks and car windshields. Inside, the ice between us slowly began to crack. What happens if we do not sign? My father finally asked, pushing the agreement away. Then you do not enter the house, I said simply, and I pursue legal options for recovering the money. You would make your own family homeless at Christmas? My mother asked, tears finally appearing. You would steal your daughter's education money for a cruise, Grandma countered. The stalemate stretched on. Terry checked her watch pointedly. I have another appointment in 30 minutes, so a decision needs to be made. My father stared at me, perhaps seeing me clearly for the first time, not as his compliant daughter who would eventually give in, but as a woman standing her ground. We cannot pay it all back immediately, he finally said, his voice less combative. The agreement does not require that, I pointed out. It requires good faith, immediate payment of what you can, and a structured plan for the rest. After another tense silence, my mother reached for the agreement. We will sign, she said quietly, but I want it noted that we were always going to pay you back. This formal approach was unnecessary. I bit back a retort, recognizing the small victory. One by one, they signed the document, my father last and with visible reluctance. Now can we go home? Jacob asked sullenly. Yes, I said, gathering the signed papers. But things will be different. As we walked back through the snow-covered streets, I explained the new household rules. They would have temporary entry codes to the house, not permanent ones. Financial responsibilities would be clearly documented and shared. Grandma's Social Security checks would be deposited directly to her personal account, not handled by my parents. This feels like punishment, my mother complained. This feels like consequences, I corrected her. There is a difference. When we reached the house, Grandma's friends had departed, except for Martin, who waited to explain the new security system. My family entered their changed home environment with subdued expressions, taking in the absence of Christmas decorations they had never put up, the practical groceries rather than holiday treats, the neatly organized bills awaiting payment. Welcome home, I said, feeling the weight of change settle over us all. The first night with my family back in the house was tense, to say the least. My parents retreated to their bedroom early, the weight of consequences visibly heavy on their shoulders. Jacob alternated between sullen silence and attempts to normalize the situation with jokes that fell flat. Only Olivia made genuine efforts to repair the damage, helping me prepare a simple dinner and asking thoughtful questions about my final semester requirements. Grandma Eleanor maintained her position as moral compass and mediator, firm but not punitive. This is not about making anyone suffer, she reminded me privately as we washed dishes together. It is about creating change. Over the next week, the patterns established during our confrontation continued to play out. My parents initially resisted the new financial accountability, complaining about the detailed expense tracking and shared bill payments I implemented. My father attempted to reassert control several times, making unilateral decisions and then acting surprised when I challenged them. I am the head of this household, he declared during one particularly heated discussion about the electricity bill, and I am the one holding you accountable. The agreement you signed requires financial transparency.
Gradually, as days passed, the resistance began to fade. The signed repayment agreement hung on the refrigerator as a constant reminder. The first payment, drawn from their flight refunds and supplemented by the sale of some cruise souvenirs, was transferred to my account and documented with photographs and receipts. Grandma's influence proved crucial during this transition period. As mother to my father and mother-in-law to my mother, she held a unique position of authority they could not easily dismiss. When my father attempted to shame me for treating family like tenants, she was quick to redirect the conversation. "Harold James Wilson," she would say, using his full name as she had since his childhood. "This situation is of your creation, not Rosalyn's. She is teaching you responsibility, something I clearly failed to do adequately." With Eleanor's temporary loan covering my immediate school expenses, I was able to register for my final clinical rotations on time. The relief of knowing my education would continue uninterrupted allowed me to focus on the longer-term healing our family needed. 2 weeks after their return, I went back to Chicago to begin my final semester. The distance provided perspective for everyone. Weekly video calls included financial updates, with my parents reporting on their progress toward repayment. My father had taken on weekend consulting work to increase his income. My mother had reduced her shopping and started selling unused household items online. The most surprising development came from my siblings. Jacob, after initial resistance, seemed to undergo a transformation. During one video call 3 weeks after I returned to school, he showed me his new budgeting app and shared that he had taken on additional shifts at his recording studio job. "I never realized how much you were carrying for all of us. It was not fair," he admitted awkwardly. Olivia went even further, calling me privately to apologize. "I was part of it too," she said, "taking advantage of you. I mean, I just never saw it that way until now, until I saw how hard you fought for yourself." These conversations were not easy. Years of established patterns do not change overnight. There were setbacks, like when my mother borrowed from the repayment fund for a department store sale, or when my father questioned whether full repayment was really necessary, given that I was doing fine with my clinical rotations. Each time, I held firm to the boundaries we had established. Each time, it became a little easier to do so. Grandma Eleanor, true to her word, moved part-time to Chicago after I graduated, renting a small apartment near my new job at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Her presence helped me maintain my newfound strength and provided a buffer as my relationship with my parents slowly healed on more equal footing. The following Christmas was dramatically different. Instead of elaborate gift exchanges funded by credit card debt, we agreed on modest, thoughtful presents. My parents hosted a small dinner rather than an extravagant party. Most importantly, they had repaid nearly half of what they had taken, making consistent monthly payments even when it required sacrifices. The lessons I learned from that terrible Christmas and its aftermath transformed me in ways I could never have anticipated. I discovered my own strength and worth. I learned that real love includes boundaries and accountability. I realized that allowing people to experience the consequences of their actions is sometimes the greatest gift you can give them. As a nurse, these lessons proved invaluable. I brought new empathy to patients struggling with difficult family dynamics. I recognized enabling behaviors and could gently guide people toward healthier boundaries. I understood from personal experience that healing often begins with painful truth. My relationship with my family will never be what it was before. The blind trust is gone, replaced by something more cautious, but ultimately more genuine. My parents still struggle with financial responsibility, but now they do so openly, asking for guidance rather than taking advantage. My siblings have become allies rather than competitors for resources. And Grandma Eleanor, at 84, continues to demonstrate that it is never too late to change family patterns. Her courage in standing with me and acknowledging her own role in creating my father's sense of entitlement remains one of the greatest acts of love I have ever witnessed. Sometimes the most valuable Christmas gift is not found under a tree or on a cruise ship,
Sometimes it comes in the form of difficult conversations, painful growth, and the courage to say no more to those we love most. That terrible note on the refrigerator led to the most important journey of my life, not across the Caribbean, but across the much more challenging terrain of self-worth and family healing. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who took advantage of you? What helped you find the strength to set boundaries? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more about navigating difficult family dynamics and building healthier relationships. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to hold them accountable. Wishing you all the strength you need for your own boundaries this holiday season.